Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Tiny Brains podcast. I'm Kevin Joyce, CEO at Tiny Brains, and with me is Peter Graham, the Brigadier of Brains at Tiny Brains. Say hello, Peter.
Good afternoon, all.
So, what we do on this podcast, if you've never watched us before, is we take a look at the biggest stories in XR from the previous week. And this week, we're diving in with a pretty big story, MetaConnect 2025.
Yes, it returns in September from the 17th to the 18th, and as always, we're always looking. We're looking forward to it. It's gonna, let's see what tomorrow's tech in and what Meta's been creating. Hopefully, but
But the reveal for MetaConnect 2025 was tiny. It was a single blog post which had less than like 3 sentences about MetaConnect. So we don't know anything about what's happening. There was a small mention of AR in the sentences that they delivered. But right now, any kind of guess as to what's on the agenda, what will be revealed, what will be talked about, new hardware, new software, it's going to be all guesses. So I'm not going to put my money where my mouth is this
no.
time. I've been right too many times lately, and I don't want to break that trend. Pete, do you want to make a guess?
Well, apart from AR, I my guess is that we're not going to see any sort of real major VR announcements. I'm not expecting a Quest 4 or anything like that this year. I still think that Quest 3 and Quest 3S have got at least another year in them before Meta's going to start putting the nail in that coffin. One thing I do know is that we're probably not going to hear a lot about AI because in the same announcement, Meta also revealed LlamaCon, which is coming in April, which is going to be their AI event. So I'm expecting most of their AI announcements to be during that in April.
But that's good. Separate these things out, right? Facebook, when they acquired Oculus, before they became Meta, used to hold an event called F8. And F8 was where they would cover Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, so on, so on, so on, so on. And Oculus Connect, now Meta Connect, is where they would cover XR. So it's great. Separate them out. Let's keep Meta Connect about Meta, right?
And all the stuff Reality Labs are doing. It's how
Exactly. Our stuff, basically. It's our event.
the stuff that, yeah, just dedicated to us. Yeah.
So, sticking with Meta for a minute, we've got some other news. This one, I think, has been received with a middling response.
Yes, it's a new funding initiative by Meta for Horizon Worlds. They have announced a 50 million fund to incentivize creators to build for Horizon Worlds, their social platform.
So, basically, they are saying to all the indie devs out there, stop making games, start making content for Horizon Worlds, which is lovely.
Yeah, if you have a look on the Meta store, then the Quest store, then yeah, there's a lot of Horizon World stuff that appears on there nowadays, even if you've, probably possibly never even used Horizon Worlds. But yes, they want more creators to build upon it because they have released a flat screen version, and so they want to try and compete with the likes of Roblox and all the others out there. And yeah, this is the way they're going to do it. And essentially, if you build a really good world, and people spend a lot of time in it, they spend a lot of it, in-app purchases, then you'll get a lot of bonuses as a creator for it. In tandem to this as well, Meta have also released a new Horizon Worlds desktop editor, which is in early access to facilitate the creation of these new worlds. And yes, obviously it's a desktop PC app, but also they are going to start delisting. They're going to wind down the VR version so that they encourage everyone just to build it on desktop.
Which is, yeah, yeah. It's not, doesn't, some alarm bells should be ringing at this point, I feel.
Yeah, becoming less VR when especially with the flat screen version, it makes it difficult for creators to build for VR and for flat screen. You have to trying to tailor to both is tricky. Where you really want to focus on one or t'other, but hey
This
ho, I'm not a creator.
this feels like a push for a metaverse as Meta have been angling for, a metaverse, not the metaverse. There is no such thing as the metaverse, a metaverse of sorts. Um, which is excluding the VR part of it, which was, the entire goal of acquiring Oculus in the first place, right? This kind of feels like it's a step backwards. And for indie devs who are struggling on that MetaQuest store, this feels like a leap backwards, I'm sure.
Well, yes, indeed. As we can have we could have a whole podcast on the Quest store itself, but yes, at the moment it does seem, even though Meta are probably still helping fund several games at the moment, a lot of developers are struggling, and it is, you know, will others pivot towards Horizon Worlds? I don't know. That might be a possibility.
Talking about developers struggling, our next story came to me as a pretty big shock, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's it. Toast Interactive, the VR developers based in Australia, announced last week that they were laying off the majority of their staff. Now, they didn't give numbers about how many this would be, and what the size of the staff. But yes, they've essentially said that after the release of Max Mustard last year, and they're most famous for Richie's Plank experience, they've had to make the sad decision to lay off the majority of their workforce, with only what I presume would be a skeleton crew left to help manage and continue developing for those two games.
So, Richie's Plank experience was developed by a very small team initially, and Toast Interactive ramped up significantly for Max Mustard. And Max Mustard launched, I don't know if any of you out there remember this, but it launched at like 99 cents, I think it was, 99p, whatever, as a like 90% discount launch thing. And it worked. They got straight to the top of the charts, and it was all gravy. And then the price went up, and people continued to buy the game because at that point, they'd got a community that was around it, pushing it, saying it was a great game, what else, and it was a good VR game.
It was, yeah.
But it was it was a it was a harsh lesson in climbing that chart to get sales. They did it, they succeeded, but it wasn't enough to sustain them. So, I mean, you could say, oh, it's because you discounted your game too heavily, but they did continue sale afterwards. So it may not be that. It may be that your expectations overall were too high. There's a million reasons you could think of to do this, but no one will know except Toast Interactive why the game that was number one in the charts for multiple VR platforms did not succeed enough to sustain their studio.
Well, that's it. Reports are that Max Mustard did sell better on PSVR 2 in the first couple of weeks than did on Quest. But again, you say these expectations of how many they were expecting to sell may have been too lofty.
Indeed. So, pouring out for the devs that are moving on from Toast Interactive. We hope you find your feet soon. You're obviously very talented in the VR, in creation of VR content. So, we hope there are more opportunities for you out there. And yeah, if you're working on your own stuff now, give us a shout.
Definitely.
Moving on, we've got Sandbox VR.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't, I don't know this one. What's going on?
Sandbox VR. Yeah,
I know Sandbox VR, but I don't know what the story is.
the location-based entertainment people have recently announced that they have achieved 200 million in lifetime ticket sales, which is good for a company that was almost dead and buried during COVID. And they have bounced back significantly. These are the people that they have around about 50 locations worldwide. They franchise these out, and they've got 30 more franchises planned for 2025. Sandbox VR have just opened a new franchise in Berlin, and they are going to be opening quite a few more over the course of the next 12 months, possibly more than 30. These are the guys that teamed up with Netflix as well. They created the Squid Game VR experience called Squid Virtuals, and they're teaming up with Netflix again for another IP. Many may remember, or did you watch it? Rebel Moon. Did you watch that film? Yes,
Okay.
they're creating Rebel Moon: The Descent for their VR locations as well.
Okay. I watched both Rebel Moons, and that's like 50 hours of my life I'm never getting back. Um, but
I've not watched the second one. I watched the first one, but I've not watched the second one yet.
anyway, I'm sure it'll make a great VR experience. It is just nonsense and lasers. So why not? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So yes, they've done well with their sales, and they're also going into developing educational content. So we'll see how that goes as well.
Okay,
Good on
I didn't know
them.
anything about this.
They've good,
Uh,
good that they've bounced back.
I knew about Sandbox. I visited many of their locations across the years. I will probably be visiting one next month when at GDC because they've got one just around the corner. Um, and yeah, they do some great experiences. They do some what you expect from LBE VR. Um, but
Zombies.
but yeah, they're yeah, good for this. Good for them. We like to see LBE VR growing because a lot of people get their first taste of VR there, and sometimes when they do the good stuff, it's enough to convince them to come on board, come join our industry.
Exactly.
Anyway, we have one last story today, and I don't know about you, Pete, but I have a long history with this series. Not in the fact that I've ever watched it, I've played several of the games, but in terms of the name. Okay, so I've been told there's two schools of thought on the name. Okay, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion,
I am in the second class or the second group.
Evangelion.
Evangelion. That's how I know it. And you know, we're both 90s kids, so they it was an anime from 1995 that I think most of the stuff it's a classic and I loved it. I don't know.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it. Well, poor. But yes, the announcement last week was that Korean studio Pixelity Inc. have officially are officially making a Neon Genesis Evangelion XR game for next year. Um, we don't know what platforms it is. There isn't a lot of information going out about it at the moment, but it will be based on the series. So it's going to be all based on the 26 episodes, and you'll play as an original character. Who that will be and how the time those 26 episodes will fit into a game timeline because it's going to be a trilogy as well. They have said it's going to be a three-part game. So I'm quite excited about it. I was a
Okay,
fan, but you weren't.
no, sounds interesting at least though. Yeah, I've never seen the anime. I'm aware of its existence, um, and the numerous spin-offs and whatever else. Sure, I will judge it on the merits of it being a game rather than it being part of the franchise.
My
So,
one hope, though, is that it's not an interactive movie. I'm hoping it's not like Mobile Suit Gundam,
yeah, I knew you
which
were going
is,
to say that.
yeah, I was going to go with that. So
Yes,
want it to be
well,
great. I want it to be a
I,
big net game.
I hope you're satisfied when it eventually comes. And so all of you out there, maybe check it out and let us know what you think. Is it going to be good or is it going to be Mobile Suit Gundam? But yes, anyway, thank you everybody for watching. If you have any stories that you're working on yourself that you'd like to have appear on this podcast, or maybe you want to come on and chat with us, feel free to reach out at any of the channels below, and we'll see you again next week.